Good morning, I'm Maiki Oreta and you're watching Business 360, where we break down the numbers, connect the dots, and give you the developments and the insights you need to navigate, adapt, and lead. Let's dive right in. Philippine net foreign direct investment inflows dropped nearly 27%, a decline of about $3 billion in the first 5 months of the year. The United States and China agreed to extend their tariff truce for another 90 days, averting new levies and buying more time for trade talks. And later on in the program, we'll be speaking to Bryan Ang, the VP of Trade at the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, for his take on U.S. President Donald Trump's sweeping tariffs and their impact on local businesses. Let's check on how global markets performed overnight. Wall Street finished lower as investors await key U.S. inflation data this week, a crucial gauge for the future path of interest rates, while also tracking developments in China-U.S. trade relations. The shakeup at the U.S. Federal Reserve and signs of labor market weakness have raised expectations that the central bank could turn more dovish later this year. July's consumer inflation report is due Tuesday, and LSEG data shows markets are pricing in about 60 basis points of Fed rate cuts by December.
There's still a little bit of uncertainty around the macro backdrop, right? Tariffs, you had kind of some headlines about whether gold would be under tariffs. You had some mixed news around semiconductors and the new pretty unusual kind of collaboration, if you want to call it that, between AMD and NVIDIA and the U.S. government. So I think markets, again, sitting right near all-time highs. Sentiment has caught up to price. So there's a higher bar to clear, and I think some of these headlines are enough to give the market pause this morning to start the week.
The Dow Jones slipped 0.5%. The S&P 500 lost 0.25%, and the Nasdaq fell 0.3%. Over in Europe, markets were mixed. London's FTSE higher by 0.4%, Germany's DAX down by 0.3%, and France's CAC 40 off by about 0.6%. Here at home, net foreign direct investment inflows to the country slipped to $3 billion in the first 5 months of the year, a sign of how global uncertainties are weighing on investor sentiment. Banco Central data shows that's 26.9% lower than the $4 billion posted in the same period last year. This even after a May uptick to $586 million from $483 million a year earlier. RCBC's chief economist, Michael Rickleford, says the May boost was helped by the release of rules for the Create More Act, which aims to draw more investments. But he notes this was offset by uncertainty over U.S. tariffs and other protectionist policies. Rickleford adds that geopolitical tensions with China also put pressure on net FDI inflows, underscoring how regional and global events continue to shape the country's investment climate. The Bangko Sentral ng Pilipinas is signaling a rate cut later this month, a move that could mark the start of looser monetary policy in Southeast Asia. Governor Eli Remolona Jr. says it's quite likely that the Monetary Board will lower rates at its next meeting on August 28th, with a total of 2 cuts expected this year. He ruled out a third cut, warning it would overshoot what he calls the Goldilocks rate, neither too hot nor too cold for the economy. Remolona notes that the country's output gap is already narrow, and a third cut would only be considered if there's a drastic growth slowdown, something he describes as unlikely. The signal comes as central banks worldwide weigh rate easing to support growth, with markets now watching if the BSP will move in tandem or ahead of the U.S. Federal Reserve. Finance Secretary Ralph Recto says revenue losses from the 60-day rice import ban will be minimal. Recto notes that tariff collections from rice imports will only dip slightly, with any supply gaps expected to be filled by imports after the harvest season and before year-end. He also says it's unlikely President Marcos will extend the import ban beyond its 60-day validity. The Department of Energy has signed an agreement to form a multi-partite monitoring team for Prime Infrastructure Capital's 600-megawatt Wawa pumped storage project in Antipolo. The DOE says that the hydroelectric power facility is a crucial step in the Philippines' shift away from fossil fuels toward renewable energy. Designed to store excess energy and provide ancillary support to the power grid, it will help balance supply and demand during peak hours. With a storage capacity of 6,000 megawatt hours per day, the project is slated to start operations by 2030. The monitoring team will track both environmental and social impacts, an approach seen as key to ensuring long-term sustainability and investor confidence. The project also underscores how Asia's emerging economies are stepping up clean energy investments, a trend closely watched by global developers and financiers. The Philippines is cleared from the U.S.'s proposed 40% tariff on transshipped goods, but the future of semiconductor exports remains uncertain. Despite this, economists remain optimistic about the country's resilience and economic recovery. Soojin Kim has the details.
The Philippines is not affected by the United States' proposed 40% tariff on transshipped goods. This was the clarification from Presidential Special Economic Advisor Frederick Go, joined by the country's economic managers.
We are not covered by that because we are not identified as a country who does transshipments. So we do not have that clause. So for example, other countries might have a 20% tariff for regular goods and 40% tariff on transshipments. So we don't have that clause.
However, the issue remains unclear on the potential 100% tariff on semiconductor exports, with Washington's announcement shifting several times. Semiconductors have been exempted, re-included, and then reportedly set for possible exemption again.
So we are still seeking clarification from the US TR side. And of course, we are lobbying that our semiconductor exports likewise be exempted if there is such.
This includes semiconductor assembly, testing, and packaging operations. He admitted this is weighing on investor sentiment.
In this period of uncertainty, it's very difficult for businesses to make long-term investment decisions.
Despite this, economists like Security Bank Chief Economist Angelo Taninco remains optimistic.
The fact of the matter remains, Philippine economy is domestic-oriented. We think that the domestic resilience of the Philippine economy will help the recovery fast-track, and that's why for next year we are upbeat.
I think that those are temporary things. The lag effects of this past lowering of policy rates and the inflation will continue to be felt in the coming quarters. The exports, we expect to at least in the next, not just this year, but in the coming years, the trust that we have is to diversify the economy so that we don't only have consumption as domestic household consumption.
Bangko Sentral Governor Eli Remolona Jr., who has cut policy rates 5 times to support growth, said,
I think things look good. I think there's room for at least one more cut. You have to balance the risk of inflation against the need for growth. Our policy rates, along with the very resilient banking system, I think are supporting growth.
Further reinforcing that
we're not going to see a crisis in the near future in the banking system. That has always been a big issue in the past. Our reserves are more than adequate. I think we're at 6 times short-term debt, so we're okay on that score. More than adequate, I would say, in terms of reserves, in terms of protecting ourselves against a foreign exchange crisis.
in the same forum. Finance Secretary Ralph Recto confirmed that a study is underway for a general tax amnesty bill to aid fiscal consolidation. Soojin Kim, Bilyonaryo News Channel.
From a proposed 100% U.S. tariff on imported computer chips to persistently high power costs and stalled manufacturing growth, the Philippines is under pressure to redefine how it competes. Business leaders warn that without a strategic reset and a clear focus on where we have a real edge, we risk falling further behind our neighbors. Joining us now is Bryan Ang, the Vice president for trade at the Philippine Chamber of Commerce and Industry, to talk about how to navigate these global shifts and where to place our bets and where the next wave of growth could come from. Hi, Bryan. Thank you for being here with us.
Good morning, Maiki. Thank you.
Okay, Bryan, from 17 to 20, now down to 19%. Does this make any real difference for our exporters?
19% is actually even higher than what it originally was. Remember, we started at 17%. Then we sent an economic team to 20%, and it was reduced by 1%. If you look at our ASEAN neighbors, most of us, Cambodia, Thailand, Indonesia, Malaysia, all of us are enjoying a 19% tariff. So there is no competitive advantage for the Philippines at all.
What's the damage on the ground for Philippine exporters, Bryan? And what are the industries that are really going to be hit first and hardest?
If you look at the semiconductor industry, they have been all over the news lately. They are extremely devastated with this semiconductor tariff. What is hopeful is that Trump has given exceptions. Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation and NVIDIA have been exempted from this chip tariff. So I hope our economic team can use this as probably a bargaining chip to negotiate with Washington further.
Yeah.
We are as much an ally of the U.S. as Taiwan is.
Yeah, speaking of that, countries like Sri Lanka and Iraq got tariff cuts while we got a hike. What does this say about our standing in trade negotiations and the U.S.'s treatment in general of the Philippines?
What's funny is they call it reciprocal tariff, but we don't see any reciprocity in this. We always gave the U.S. all of our military concessions. We allowed them to increase their EDCA sites. Lately, we even gave them these missiles to be placed in our EDCA sites. But it seems that the military concessions were not reciprocated with our tariff requests. And if you look at South Korea, Japan, Taiwan, they got 15% tariff. We are even higher than them. But I don't think they gave even more military concessions than we did.
Yeah, despite our military concessions, that's to be noted. Talking about our export model, how outdated would you say it is in 2025? And, several administrations have gone by. This hasn't really been a policy priority. It's come into focus now because of Trump and his tariffs. Why has this never really been a priority, and how outdated would you say our current export model is?
If you remember, Maiki, growing up, we could buy Nike shoes, Levi's jeans made in the Philippines, and all these Ralph Lauren shirts. Today, not a single one of these brands are made in the Philippines. And this has been decades ago. So it shows that our export market and export model needs massive changes. In fact, I'm happy in a certain way that these Trump tariffs put Philippine export in the spotlight right now, and it opens up discussions with the national government.
Should we pivot? What should alternative models look like? Where should we focus on?
For export to be successful, we should follow the model used by Vietnam and Cambodia. They give support for their energy. They give income tax holiday. They give subsidy for energy and fuel. This supports their manufacturing sector. And as you know, in the Philippines, the manufacturing sector is getting smaller and smaller.
Bryan, we've always had high power costs, wage increase, possibilities of wage increases, which rattle investors. The odds always seem to have been stacked against us in this light. What would you say a realistic growth path would look like for the Philippines?
I would actually shift our focus from focusing on these Trump tariffs. Why don't we focus on a low-hanging fruit, say tourism? We have not reached our pre-pandemic tourism arrivals. They were at around 8.8 million, and today we're still below 6 million. Why? A big part of this is China tourists. China tourists account for almost 2 million arrivals.
Yeah.
Why haven't we refocused all of our resources and all of our attention to inviting these tourists back to the Philippines? We have a very beautiful country, very beautiful Filipino service. This can at least augment our dying export industry if our tourism is improving. Do you know a Chinese tourist spend $1,500 per tourist? And there's 2 million of them. So that's easily $3 billion worth of foreign income arriving into our economy.
Yeah, just to strengthen your case, Bryan, how do ASEAN and China fit into this equation? Despite political tensions with China, do you think that we should shift, as you mentioned earlier, shift our focus to tourists from China?
Yes, we should follow actually what Trump is doing. Trump has a separate negotiation for military and a separate negotiation for trade. So we should do that. If, let's say, we and China cannot agree on the West Philippine Sea, let it be. We agree to disagree. But on investment, tourism, trade, we can look at China. They will be open to us. If you look at our ports, so many BYD vehicles are coming in. Look at our streets, so many sales of Chinese EV vehicles. So this shows that China is still open to economic cooperation. But
And
in tourism, whether it be their products.
And Bryan, if you had one message to give to President Marcos and his economic team on the single biggest action to build our competitiveness, what would you tell them?
To build on competitiveness, our manufacturing has to innovate. And what I would recommend is, if China continues to send us their EV vehicles, then please open an assembly plant here. BYD has opened an assembly plant in Thailand, making 150,000 vehicles a year. They have opened another assembly plant in Vietnam. Why not open in the Philippines? We have just a skilled labor.
Yeah.
And
Bryan?
we can give the same amount of income tax holiday, whatever you need. I think the government is open to that, so long as you will invest in the Philippines.
Yeah. Bryan, I also wanted to get your thoughts on Trump's 100% tariff on chips. He's proposing this for imported computer chips. Note that, semiconductors are our biggest export to the United States. What are your thoughts on how damaging this would be to this industry?
This is totally devastating. We have heard the semiconductor industry say that there is no hope for them. So I'm glad that the economic team continues to pursue negotiations with Washington in the hopes that we get an exception. As I said earlier, if you can accept TSMC, the Taiwan Semiconductor Manufacturing Corporation, and NVIDIA, why can't you accept the Philippines from that? You know that the Philippines is almost solely reliable on chip exports.
Bryan, another thing I wanted to talk to you about, the thorny issue of flood control. And I wanted to get your thoughts on this because you were one of the first to really push for PPPs in this regard. But first, let's talk about the economic toll of the damage. From the business community's perspective, how big of a problem is this?
The problem with fund control, as mentioned by the President in the SONA, is it is filled with corruption. Number two, you don't see the benefits of it. Whenever there's a flood, the whole country is flooded. But we have put in billions, if not trillions of money in the last decades to flood control. So what came to my mind was I looked at the success of the new NAIA terminal and the success of, let's say, the Skyway 3 interconnector. And I realized that infrastructure projects that are given to the private sector generally are more successful, efficient, and cheaper than if you give it to the bureaucracy of the national government.
Bryan, the president raised red flags, a mismatch between flood-prone areas and where projects are built. 64% of projects lacking clear descriptions and identical bids across different locations. What's your reaction to these specific findings?
We are glad that the president raised this issue and it has opened up an entire Pandora's box. So everyone is coming out now and talking about flood control. If you look at, for example, Isabela, they never get a flood, but look at their flood control project. They have so many. This is just one example. So the business sector is happy whenever there is accountability in government and transparency. And we hope that this does not stop here. The president has launched a website, yung isumbong kay Presidente. And I feel that this will open up more, I hope not ghost projects, but projects that need to be reviewed.
And you're pushing for private sector involvement. Bryan Ang says the private sector should take control of flood control, starting with cleaning Metro Manila's waterways for free. What's your view on this? How viable is this?
Well, for companies like San Miguel, this kind of dredging project, they've been doing ever since pre-pandemic time. It's just, they said, 2 billion? It cost them just 2 billion to dredge the entire Pasig River. So this is just CSR for them. We welcome other private companies to engage in the same, but we know that private sector itself cannot solve the entire problem on flood control. You need the LGUs to be helped by the national government as well. And we should also consider looking at ODA investments.
Official
We
development
never
assistance
talk about
like JICA.
Laguna Bay, Laguna de Bay, which is always flooding. But Laguna de Bay already has a pending spillway project that JICA has been proposing. I hope that national government will look into this and move this forward immediately. This will greatly relieve the southern Luzon area from flooding.
Yeah, following a week's worth of flooding prior to the sauna, it's really come into focus. Let's talk about let's talk more about this. Senator Lacson suggests that if private solutions work, the government's flood control budgets could be cut. Talk to us about the cost benefits and the savings of taking these projects and working with PPPs.
So the nature of a PPP is you pass on the entire project, the financial risk, to the private sector. This will free up the entire 1 trillion peso of floodway projects we'd have over the last 3 years. You can use that to build more hospital, to build more classrooms for our students. And then for private sector, they can raise this through whether commercial loan, they raise bond, they issue preferred share, etc. So this puts all of the onus, financial and the blame even, to the private sector. The next time you see flooding, you'll blame it on San Miguel if it's the area that it covers. So it takes also a lot of guts for the private institution to engage in this, because all eyes will be on flooding right now, and nobody in general wants to be at the eye of the storm, kumbaga.
Yeah, absolutely, Brian. And you know, these are massive contracts, and people have the same worries. What if we're just shifting the, perhaps the corruption from the public to the private sector? What would you say to this on how the private sector system can guarantee better transparency, efficiency, and better project completion?
As I mentioned, PPP involves privately sourced funds. So if I am borrowing at commercial rate or issuing bonds at 8 to 9%, why will I allow my people to be corrupt? I have to return that investment immediately. So I will find the cheapest and most efficient way to execute this project.
And
Number two, the name of my conglomerate is at stake. So I will make sure that it is a success, that no single complaint will be filed against me.
what would you say are the best practice models, Brian? We've had great PPP expressway projects. What can we learn from this?
The best examples for me are the new NAIA terminal. We have been there recently. You will see the difference when it was run by government as compared to now that it is run by the private sector. It's a lot more efficient. The lines are shorter. It's more comfortable for the traveling public. Another one is the Skyway 3. You can see the interconnection. Yes, you have to pay a toll fee, but that's a small price to pay for the amount of time you save away from traffic.
Okay.
So these are models we can follow.
And what would this look like in practice again, Brian? It would be led by the private companies with oversight from the DPWH. How would you suggest this?
I suggest oversight team maybe OSAPEA and the DPWH, because the DPWH has the engineering capability for oversight, and then OSAPEA has the financial oversight capability. That would be a good mix.
And talk to us, Brian, how does improving this flood control resistance and working with the PPPs for this help our ability to attract investors, boost exports, and boost our supply chains?
Well, successful PPP will always attract foreign investors because that is the first thing that they will see. As soon as they arrive, they see our airport. As soon as they see our airport, they take the NAIA Expressway. And then they will look at our streets. Is it flooded? Is it traffic? So you create a very good first impression. Next year, we are hosting the ASEAN Leaders Summit, where all heads of state of ASEAN will be in the Philippines. And this is the perfect way to showcase our country as an investment destination.
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, Brian, thank you so much for your time. Bryan Ang, the Vice President of Trade at PCCI. We're taking a quick break now. Please stay with us as we dive deep into the numbers and the narratives that matter most to your bottom line. Welcome back. Let's check on how Asian markets are doing this Tuesday morning. Right now, the Nikkei 225 is sharply in the green, up by 2.4%. Hong Kong's Hang Seng Index flat with a slight downward bias. Shanghai's Composite up by about 0.5%, and Singapore's Straits Times Index down by 0.3%. So we are seeing a mixed picture. Here at home, the local stock market started the week in the red yesterday with little in the way of fresh catalysts to drive gains. PSE index slumped 1.34% to close at 62.54. Selling pressure dominated as investors waited for the next market driver after last Friday's PSEI rebalancing. Attention now turns to a key consumer price index report due today, a figure that could influence the Federal Reserve's next rate move. Now, trading value reached 7.1 billion pesos on 1.39 billion billion shares traded. Over the near term, analysts expect the market to move sideways until clear signals emerge from U.S. inflation data or other macro drivers, with strong support seen at around the 6,200 level. Checking on the PSEI today, the main gauge as of 10:32 is in the green, up by 0.5% to 62.84. The broader all shares index up as well, up by 0.4% to 37.47. As for the sub-indices, all are trading in the green except for the industrial counter, which is flat with a slight downward bias. Sharp gains in the holding and mining and oil counters, which are all up by over 1%. Total volume traded is at 106 million shares, valued at 1.2 billion pesos. Economic managers push for entry fees and minimum bets, along with tighter safeguards and higher tax rates to make it harder to access online gambling sites. Special Assistant to the President for Investment and Economic Affairs, Frederick Goh, says that the entry fee requirement is similar to the one implemented in Singapore. BSP Governor Eli Remolona, for his part, says that the government workers receiving financial assistance should not be allowed to gamble. Meanwhile, Finance Secretary Ralph Recto says that the DOF is studying the possibility of further taxing online gambling, which could contribute an additional 20 billion pesos in annual revenues. The Marcos administration's push to unify all government IDs is also designed to help regulate gambling. The Department of Economy, Planning and Development, or DepDev, says that the platform can block social protection beneficiaries from placing online bets. DepDev Secretary Arsenio Balisacan says that the Philippine identification system is being linked with databases of other agencies, so each citizen has a single number for verification. This will make it easier to track eligibility for benefits and enforce restrictions such as gambling bans for aid recipients. On the corporate front, JG Summit Holdings nearly triples its net income to 10.7 billion pesos in the second quarter, marking one of its strongest quarterly performances in the recent years. In a disclosure to the stock exchange, the company attributes the surge to strong performances in its airline, real estate, and food and beverage businesses. It also cites reduced losses in its petrochemical segment and gains from compensation over aircraft engine issues. The results reflect recovering travel demand, stable property income, and resilient consumer spending, even amid a challenging economic environment. The Philippines is ramping up efforts to close the AI skills gap through targeted training programs, part of a broader push to stay competitive in the digital global economy. Science and Technology Department Secretary Renato Solidom highlighted plans to upskill workforce, students, and the public to support AI adoption in various sectors. Partnering with education agencies and private companies, the government aims to train 1 million AI-skilled workers by 2028. For micro and small businesses, the DOST is funding an AI center to boost efficiency, while more than 30 AI startups have received support. The country's AI readiness has improved, rising to 56th out of 188 countries in the 2024 Oxford Insights Index. Now, the Vios may still dominate the track, but a new homegrown contender is gearing up for action. Toyota is giving racing fans a first look at one make race starring the iconic Tamarao 100% Pinoy. Our mobility correspondent G. Baroga takes us trackside.
This year marks the 11th season of the Toyota Gazoo Racing Philippine Cup, and instead of coasting, Toyota spiced things up, bringing back street races, adding a legacy class for seasoned drivers, and launching the GR Club race for weekend warriors. Toyota PH President Masando Hashimoto said it best. After 10 years, it was time for something new.
We have many racers joining this event, but year by year, that level of excitement gets a bit smaller and smaller. So we need to reignite those people's heart or fire.
The big tease came during the season's third and final leg over the weekend when Bilyonaryo heir Andy T, AVP for Marketing Services and head of the newly formed GR section of Toyota, revealed plans for a new category for 2026.
We are planning to make the Tamarao one make race an entirely separate class. For next year, the Vios will be it will be the standard classes that you see from this season, but we do plan to add for the Tamarao.
Performance shop Auto Plus was tapped to re-engineer the Tamarao into a competitive race car. Its president Luis Gono says that even them were impressed with how it turned out.
We were already able to reach lap times of below 2:30 in the practice today. So we're hoping to get closer to the 220s in a few months. I haven't raced in 7 years, pero it really got me excited again to be behind the wheel of an all-new car, all-new skill set required to drive this car since it's not your conventional race car, as you said.
To give fans a taste, Toyota rolled out the Tamaraos for a drag race and a sprint race, putting former Vios Cup winners in the driver's seat. One of them is 2017 champion Daniel Miranda, grandson of diplomat and Bilyonaryo Philip Luwillier, who returned to the track for the first time in nearly 8 years.
The power is enough. There's lots of grip, and yeah, the handling is more than I expected. It doesn't feel like you're driving a long wheelbase vehicle.
2021 champ turned coach Stefano Rivera says the utility vehicle is 75% race ready.
Felt like, I'll be honest, a big Vios. Now, there's steering, but controllable. It was, also fast in the straights, and something I missed. Really, really fun car to drive.
For Toyota, the mission remains clear: grow Philippine motorsports and build better cars.
Currently, we're working hard on developing our TGR roadmap. And of course, that includes developing the racer journey as well as the fan journey for Toyota Gazoo Racing.
The 2025 season of the Toyota Gazoo Racing Philippine Cup may be a wrap, but it has already given us a sneak peek of what's coming next, the Tamarao Cup. For BNC Mobility, G. Baroga.
We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. Bulacan Vice Governor Alex Castro clarifies that the provincial government does not have funds for flood control projects, saying these are planned and managed at the national level by the Department of Public Works and Highways. His statement follows President Bongbong Marcos's disclosure that Bulacan has the highest number of flood control projects in the country, 668 in total. In an interview on BNC's At the Forefront, Castro said residents have been asking about these projects, but he has no first-hand information on them.
Ang alam lang namin is yung mga provincial infrastructure projects na kami mismo yung nag-i-implement. So, meron akong nakitang gano'n na saan nyo dinala to, Governor Daniel and Vice Gov Alex. And gusto ko lang linawin sa kanila na yung mga flood, wala po akong pondo ng flood control project bilang Vice Governor. Si Governor Daniel ay hiwalaring flood control project. At kung aasahan yung provincial government po na pondo ay hindi, yung wala po kaming naka-allocate na talagang para sa, katulad nung pinag-uusapan ngayon, dahil ito po ay DPWH at national project po ito. So hindi po ito galing sa amin.
Looking ahead, Castro recommended greater involvement from local governments in the implementation and monitoring of flood control projects, saying this would help improve accountability, ensure resources are well used, and boost public trust. The issue highlights a wider national debate on how flood management funds are allocated and who should oversee them. Another motion for reconsideration is filed with the Supreme Court, challenging the dismissal of Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment case, submitted by a group of lawyers, religious leaders, and civil society members. The motion argues that the House of Representatives did not violate any law or procedure when it transmitted the articles of impeachment to the Senate. The petitioners, who also filed the third impeachment complaint against the vice president, say she should face the impeachment court as a measure of accountability for her use of power. In an interview on BNC's Agenda, attorney Mel Santamaria said that the Constitution's one impeachment proceeding per year rule was not violated. His comment comes after retired Justice Adolfo Ascuna criticized the Supreme Court for confusing once per year with once a year in its decision on Vice President Sara Duterte's impeachment. Attorney Santamaria backed Ascuna's interpretation, saying that the rule refers to the frequency of proceedings, not the number of complaints that can be filed.
Tignan natin yung mismong artikulo o probisyon ng ating konstitusyon. Ang sabi ganito, no impeachment proceedings shall be initiated against the same official more than once within a period of 1 year. Yung proceeding, iyon yung lahat nung araw nung February 2025. Isang session, isang proceeding, kahit ilang ilamp mo doon, isa lang yun. Kaya inang sinasabi ni Ascuna, hindi one complaint. Once every within a period of 1 year. At ang antecedents nung once is proceeding.
Fuel prices are set to go down today. Shell, Sea Oil, and other fuel companies cut the price of gasoline by 40 centavos per liter, diesel by 1 peso and 50 centavos per liter, and kerosene by 1 peso and 30 centavos per liter. The price cut comes as the Organization of Petroleum Exporting Countries, or OPEC, and its allies increase production amid uncertainty over President Trump's tariff policies. We're taking a short break. Business 360 will be right back. Welcome back. The United States and China agreed to pause tariff hikes on each other's goods for another 90 days. In a Truth Social post, U.S. President Donald Trump said he signed an executive order extending the tariff suspension on China. He added that all other terms of the agreement remain unchanged. The announcement came just hours before a deadline when U.S. tariffs on Chinese goods were set to rise to 64% from 30%. It's still unclear what rates China would have imposed on American goods, which currently face minimum tariffs of 10%. U.S. President Donald Trump declares a public safety emergency in Washington, using his powers under the Home Rule Act to take federal control of the city's police department and deploy the National Guard. Trump says the move is necessary to address what he calls complete and total lawlessness, accusing the city council of enabling crime through a Trump also issued warnings to other Democratic-run cities, including Chicago, Los Angeles, and New York, saying that they have very bad crime problems. The move escalates an already heated debate in the United States over crime, policing, and federal versus local authority, with implications for both law enforcement policy and the upcoming election season.
The mayor's incompetent, and Gavin Newsom is incompetent. Got a good line of but that's about it. He's incompetent. And you have Los Angeles is, you know, it's amazing. You know, I called, the first thing I did, I got the Olympics to go there. I was the one that got it. And by a rare thing that happened, I'll be the president. I was very upset because I got the Olympics there, and I said I won't be president when it comes. But bad things happened, and illegal things happened, really illegal things happened.
Some reactions now. Washington's Mayor Muriel Bowser pushes back on President Trump's move to take control of D.C. police and deploy the National Guard. She also denies Trump's claims of rampant crime, saying the city will cooperate but will defend its autonomy. The mayor also renews her call for D.C. statehood.
I think I speak for all Americans. We don't believe it's legal to use the American military against American citizens on American soil. I'm not a lawyer, and but I think that's a fairly widely held fact. And so, but we've seen them move, I think, the active military into California. So it's a question. We've seen active military on the borders of D.C. some years ago, and we don't believe that our military should be used against American citizens.
Trump's declaration has triggered protests among residents. Senate President Chiz Escudero is holding a news briefing. Let's listen in.
9%. Bakit pinagtuunan ng pansin hindi yung mga mambabatas marahil o opisyal ng gobyerno na kontraktor? Hindi naman ako kontraktor. Hindi ako bahagi na anumang negosyo kaugnay sa construction o supply sa pamahalaan mula nung pumasok ako sa gobyerno noong 1998. Sa katunayan, yung mas malaking bahagi ng pondong di umano nakuha nung kontratistang tiga Sorsogon ay nakuha niya bago pa ako naging senador muli noong 2022. Ayon mismo sa datos na pinresenta ng Pangulo kahapon. So klaro, malisyoso ang artikulo, tiniming ang paglabas at tiniming talaga para ika nga idikit ito bagaman walang sinabi ang artikulong ginawa kong mali o masama. Yung insinuation, yung innuendo, nandun pa rin. Kaya minabuti kong sagutin ngayong umaga. Kaya for the record, wala akong kinalaman sa pag-identify, paggawa ng program of work, pagbid, pag-award, pagbahay, pagbayad, pag-inspeksyon ng anumang proyekto sa pamahalan, sa Sorsogon man o sa labas ng lalawigan ng Sorsogon. Meron kaming bibigay sa inyong data tungkol sa kinal naming figures kung saan papatunayan nun na wala pa nga ako dito nung karamihan yon ay nakuha.
Sino involved dun sa demolition job hanggang ngayon?
Yung mga may gusto ng impeachment, yung marahil nasaktan, tinamaan o nasapul sa mga talumpati at mga pinaggagawa at pinagsasabi ko nitong mga nagdaang araw. Klaro naman yon.
Kasamahan
yun ang impormasyong nakakarating sa amin.
Kasamahan nyo rin, sir, dito sa
Hindi principally kasamahan namin dito sa Senado. Sa pagkakaalam namin sa labas, pero hindi ko alam kung may tumutulong, kakuntsaba o kakumplot. Pero taga labas.
Sir,
obvious naman siguro yun. Kung sino yung pinaka may gusto ng impeachment. Yes. Uy, magsisingit lang ako.
Sir, mambabatas din, sir. Itong demolition job.
Ayon sa aming impormasyon, okay na. Uy,
So, sir,
ready.
kino-confirm nyo na nag-donate siya ng 30 million?
Yes, nasa records yun. In fact, nakuha yan ng Rappler mismo sa article na sinulat nila noong 2022, 2023 pa. Yung impormasyon namin,
Pero yung nagde-demolition job sa inyo, taga-house?
Yung nagde-demolition.
Yung nasa likod ng demolition job,
naman.
ay taga-house?
Di ba nga, nung nakarang linggo naman, may video yung nilabas sa akin sa house at kung ano nung innuendo at insinuation na naman ang pinalabas. As if naman may maling ginagawa. Hindi naman ako nagnakaw doon. Kung yun man, pumasok lang ako. Yes, Nipa.
Contributor nyo nga raw. So pa-explain lang po,
Matag-
masama ba to o walang
Hindi nga.
mali dito?
Gaya ng sinabi ko, wala namang sinabi yung Rappler article na illegal na ginawa. Dahil wala naman talagang illegal doon. Kaya lang yung innuendo nga, insinuation at yung malicious timing, kino-question ko. Dahil lumabas ng article to noon pa, inulit lang uli at dinikit dito sa kwentong ito. Ang kwentong ito na insertion, sabi ko nga, ang pinakamalaking ang nakuhang pondo, ayon mismo sa paglalahad ng Pangulo kahapon, ay nung niwala ako dito sa Senado. Ako'y gobernador sa aming lalawigan.
Sir, kung magkaroon ng Senate investigation,
Ha?
kung magkaroon ng Senate investigation, kahit naging campaign donor nyo yon, hindi yon makakaasa na magiging fair pa rin kayo
Sa
sa...
27 taon ko sa Kongreso, sa gobyerno at sa Senado, ang mali palagi sa akin ay mali at ang tama ay tama. Kaibigan man, kakilala o hindi, pantay ang aking magiging pagtrato. Yes.
Tinulungan niyo ba ito? May tinawagan kayo para makakuha sila ng mga kontrata, mga ganyan?
Gaya ng sinabi ko, hindi, wala at niwala sa artikulo yon. Yan na naman yung innuendo at insinuation na palaging dinidikit at sinasabi porkit nag-contribute o nagbigay. Matagal ko ng kaibigan at kakilala siya at tumutulong talaga sa amin. Mula't mula pa, nung hindi pa iso to. At tubong sorsogon talaga siya.
SP, sorry. Pero nakakuha siya ng kontrata nung senador na po kayo at ulitin ko lang, at may any help ba siyang
Yung
nakuha?
mas malaking nakuha niya ay nung wala ako dito.
Sen,
wala ako dito nun. Bibigyan
Pero-
namin yung figure sa inyo.
Pero nung senador na kayo, SP, nakakuha pa siya ng kontrata po?
Hindi ko alam dahil hindi naman niya ako partner sa negosyo. Hindi ako bahagi ng kanya negosyo. Again, that's the innuendo and the insinuation being floated and propagated. Bakit natin hindi tingnan? Sino ba yung mga mambabatas at opisyal na gobyerno na aktual na kontraktor, aktual na may-ari nung mga kumpanya na nakakuha ng kontrata sa gobyerno? Kaya nga naghain kami ng panukalang batas, hindi ba ng bill, na sinasabing bawal na up to the 4th civil degree. Kasi usually pag nagiging gobyerno, nagiging opisyal ng gobyerno, appointed o elected, binibigay sa anak, binibigay sa asawa. 4th civil degree is beyond the first cousin. So second cousin na kung gusto niyang ipasa pa kung pagkakatiwalaan niya.
Isa na lang, SP. For the record, lahat nung nakuha niya nung time na senador na kayo, wala kayong tinulong sa kanya?
Wala at hindi ko alam nga kung ano man yun. Dahil hindi ako bahagi ng kanyang kumpanya at wala akong pakialam sa kanyang negosyo. At kung titingnan at susuriin din niyo yung paglalahad ng Pangulo, may Cebu, may kung saan-saan, wala na, hindi ko alam. Hindi naman siya nag-report sa akin ng mga ganyan. Yes.
Sen, may mga lumalabas na mga ibang video din na sinasabi nung 2021, mga nasa 4 lang yung kanyang project, yung kanyang company. But 2022, after kayong magtulungan doon sa inyong kandidatura, umabot na ng mahigit
work, pag-bid, pag-award. Ang binibid at award namin ay mga programa at proyekto ng lalawigan noon, ng Sorsogon, kung saan procuring entity ang Sorsogon Provincial Government. Wala kaming kinalaman sa National Government Agency procurement. Kabilang na ang pagbabayad. Hindi nga ako bahagi ng Kongreso. Pero babalikan ko. Bakit ba pinupuntirya ng Rappler at ninyo ang 1% ng 550 billion? Nasaan yung 99%? Talagang ang unang article na ilalabas, napaka-coincidental naman, galing naman masyado. Unahin natin yung 1% bago yung 99%. Hindi inuna yung pinakamalalaking kumpanyang binanggit ng Pangulo, isa pa sa pinakamaliit. Pero maging ganun pa man, dahil wala kaming tinatago, sasagutin ko palagi yan at hindi ko tatalikuran. Yung responsibilidad na maging transparent at sumagot sa mga katanungan bagaman dispalinghado kaugnay sa bagay na ito.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you and good morning. Sorry, ayaw ko kunin ka, JP.
You're watching Senate President Chiz Escudero defend himself against recent reports that claims his top campaign donor secured 5.16 billion pesos worth of flood control projects. Some of the highlights of that briefing: he said that the articles were malicious and baseless. He says that he had nothing to do with any of the said projects, though he did confirm that the projects were given to the said donor. He said that he believes that those against his decision to archive the impeachment of Vice President Sara Duterte at the House are behind all of this. And that was a recap of that briefing. And that's it for Business 360. I'm Maiki Oreta. Thank you for joining us, and keep it here on BNC, the Bilyonaryo News Channel.